Really?
If you keep delaying starting, it's a very good chance to rain.
Wow. Okay.
The
So
logic is clear.
Dr. Krako is trying something interesting on me. I'm not falling for it.
Using intelligence?
He's got 5 more minutes of bottling he wants. No, 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Sorry.
Doc, I just want to let you know you're the one who invented the whole bottling until 10 thing. Just saying. Eli Shochet. Wow. Now we're blaming people who aren't even here to defend themselves. That's like next level.
Ellie and Aram.
Uh-huh.
They explain bottling.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's get started.
Are you sure? I mean, you still have
All right. Everybody know what page we're on?
I just sent
All right.
one.
All right, Doc.
Okay,
208.
this is what.
208, Doc.
Here.
Oh, this is yours? Oh.
I knew I had a marker in mine.
Thank you. So we're 108?
Ding dong, Lynn.
All right, here we go.
It's all good.
All right, so we're up to new chapter, chapter 3. So here we're going to start talking about more of the individualistic system that's used, and we're going to be basing it on the principles that we've already established previously. So if you are not familiar with something, just stand at this point and know that I am already admonishing you for not paying attention previously, but I won't do it now. So feel free to ask if something isn't clear.
Oh yeah, you made it real comfortable.
There we go. That's what I'm here for. All right, here we go. Parag Gimel, B'hashgacha Ishis. When it comes to the personal connection that Hashem has and the way He runs the world in regards to the individual. So, Hine Kvar Yigdamnu. We have already introduced earlier that the idea of the work that a person needs to do in this world is based on the fact that Hashem created the world with good things and bad things. And mankind was placed in middle of these in order to choose. Is he going to choose the good or is he going to choose the bad? So that's how the world was set up. However, the details of all the good things in the world are extensive, and the same of the details of that which is bad. Because every good midah, every good characteristic that a person has, or has access to, shall we say, is part of the good. The hafach kol midah, and the opposite is true of every bad midah. So it's interesting to note that the good and bad here, he's incorporating all good and bad into the midos of a person, which is a very interesting concept. He's not talking about good and bad in the forms of like winning the lottery and having to a tsunami, right? That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about good and bad as the way we act and the way we react. That's how he's categorizing the good and bad in the world. So it's important to understand that the real battle is not about the good and bad that happens around us. The real battle is the good and bad that happens within us. That's what he's saying over here. So when we're talking about the purpose of creation and the way things are designed to be, the design is, the primary focus of the design is that which is within us. The way we react when it comes to all the different midos that we have. And the surrounding, the peripheral design, is all the things that are there just to bring the real good and bad into play. Right? So a person, for example, would win the lottery. That's a means to get the reaction of winning the lottery out of this person. The actual point is the reaction that he's going to have, not the means that caused it. And the same is true with something bad. If someone stubs their toe, that's not the evil. The person just stubbed their toe in order to be put into a situation to see which of their midos they're going to use to react to that. So that's the real point of the world, is all the reactions that we have and the opportunities that we have to choose between acting or reacting in the positive versus acting or reacting in the negative. So just to be aware, that's what he is discussing over here.
You're saying as far as when you go get stubbed your toe, you stub the toe instead of saying, okay, fine, this is, I'm gonna show you something, whatever, or just not say anything versus swearing and.
Yes, so the reaction can be either positive or negative. Are you asking what happens if it's neither? Is that what you're asking?
No, so we're saying the positive and negative is the negative would be in a way of swearing, like I could say something so versus.
Right. The positive end would be, thank you, Hashem, I needed that. I appreciate it. I don't know why, but I appreciate it. The negative would be, Hashem, I hate you. How'd you do that? Right? Most of us tend to land somewhere in between, hopefully. So, where exactly on the scale every reaction lands, that's, Hashem knows that.
We're all
There's a
paying on
difference
him.
between being reactive and proactive. Taking, stubbing the toe, you could be reactive or you could be proactive with that stubbing of the toe, meaning that you could look at it.
Do it on purpose?
No, proactive after it happens and do something like this, whatever you want to say, however you want to frame it spiritually and behaviorally, so that you don't have to displace that anger onto your family, onto a wall, onto, you know what I mean, kicking other things around and hurting your other toe.
Better onto a wall.
Right, so that's being
I would
proactive
say
with
good.
the stubbing of the toe.
Interesting,
rather than
okay.
reactive.
Good
All right,
reaction is
all right.
a wall as opposed to your family, I would think. There's levels
I'm not
of
judging
there's
you.
levels of bad things.
Yeah.
I mean, inanimate versus animate objects.
Yes. Things with feelings versus things without. Yes.
Do you apply this to somebody as a mental either illness or mental symptom? They get depressed. Should they be reacting the same? Is that the test, so to speak?
If someone gets depressed, is that a failure of the test? Is that what you're asking?
No. Is you said stubbing your toe.
Yes.
So you go, I have a reaction.
Yes.
You're depressed. Is that similar or not?
Is that you're asking is getting depressed over something, is that a bad reaction? That's what you're asking.
No, I'm not.
So what are you asking?
I'm asking when a person, let's say, is diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, depression, PTSD, do we look at the same paradigm for this? Would we say, in other words,
You're saying if someone has a predisposition to getting angry and then they get angry, do they fail the test? Versus someone else could go through the exact same circumstance and they would not get angry?
If they
Okay,
have a
so
mental
please
health
phrase
issue.
your question.
Maybe he's saying if they have a mental health condition,
Yes.
and so that mental health condition, is that taken into consideration
Right.
when a
So you're
circumstance
asking,
happens?
so you're asking if someone has a predisposition to getting angry. Okay, we'll call it whatever, legal term you want to call it,
When I get
okay?
angry, I get undiagnosed
Okay,
Tourette's.
quick to anger syndrome, right?
Or Charlie.
You know that one, quick to anger syndrome? No? Okay, so somebody's given a label of a quick to anger syndrome, and then they get angry. Is that called a failure of the test? The same way somebody who doesn't have quick to anger syndrome and they get angry. Are they both equally judged? The answer is of course not. No two people are equally judged. Everybody is judged based on their personal circumstances, taking everything into account, including any predispositions. So if a person is easily angered, then obviously for them, getting angry is going to be held against them at a much lower level than somebody who is not easily angered and they get angry anyway. And that's true of everything.
Level.
Right.
Might be
Everything
fair,
is
somebody else's
completely
life.
subjective, entirely subjective.
Use the term depression.
Same thing.
Give an example of that.
An example of if somebody is depressed and because of that they react to something negatively, so if the depression is not entirely their own fault, then that will be taken off. The points deducted will be lowered because they've already got this depression.
I have an example, if I can just use a proof from, I think, I'm not saying it verbatim, but I think if I understood it correctly, Rabbi Pliskin said in one of his Smarim, Rabbi Pliskin said if a person has mental health condition, depression, anxiety, and could be having thoughts that are not necessarily Torah, different thoughts, and they're really, and even he may have used an example of like, what do we call, where somebody is dealing with postpartum depression. So sometimes those thoughts with postpartum depression is a very scary thought about their loved ones, right? He says that is not put inside the judgment and held to the strictest that it would be, like Rabbi Nidik was saying. It's subjective. That person is looked at and judged in a different fashion than a person would be that does not have postpartum depression or any sort of mental health condition. So yes, I think the bottom line is it's held in a different.
Absolutely. Yeah. However you slice it, everybody is judged entirely subjectively based on their immediate circumstance right then and there. Now, as we learned, if a person causes a certain circumstance, they're going to be held accountable for the cause as well. So if somebody gets in the habit of doing something bad, then 5 years down the road, it's going to be very difficult for them to stop because they've already been feeding this habit for so long. But it's still going to be counted against them from the first time that they did it wrong, and that builds up because it's all part of their original decision. And the same works on the reverse. If a person is constantly working on themselves, then every step that they work towards will be a gain for them based on their original choice as well. So all of these things are taken into account, and obviously only Hashem can make that judgment call. Now, I don't want to get into the world of clinical diagnoses, because sometimes people just take those as excuses, and they think, oh, well, if I'm clinically diagnosed, so there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm off the hook, right? So you can't take that as a free pass and say, oh, the doctor said I'm clinically depressed, so that's it. I can do whatever I want. No, it doesn't work that way. A person is given specific circumstances that they have to work on within those circumstances. So for every person's job, it's going to look different based on their circumstances. Okay? All right, continuing on. Derech Mashal, for example. Hagaiva, haughtiness, echad me'inyane hara. That's one of the bad traits. V'hanava minyane hatayv. And humility is among the good ones. Harachmanus, mercy, me'inyane hatayv. That's one of the good ones. V'havcha, achzarius. And brazenness is the opposite. That's one of the bad ones. Hayistapkus v'hasimcha b'chalkai, being satisfied and happy with what you do have, minyane hatayv, that's one of the good ones. V'hepcha, on the opposite, not being happy with what you have but wanting more, is minyane hara, that's one of the bad. V'chein kol sh'ar pratei midas, and the same is true of all midas. All midas are going to be generally categorized into one or the other. Now, it's very important to note, and Rabbi Friedlander goes through this with Chaim Friedlander. He says you have to understand that every single midah has an appropriate time and place. So even though one is generally not good, it doesn't mean it's always not good. Because if something was purely evil, it wouldn't exist. There's no midah that exists that doesn't have a time and place, because then why would it be here? Every single midah has a time and place when it's appropriate. So, for example, gaiva, haughtiness, is almost always a bad thing. However, there is a time when it's appropriate, and the Gemara tells us that that's appropriate when one needs to stand up for the respect of Torah. If the respect of Torah is being attacked, it's being threatened, then those who are the stalwarts of Torah need to stand up proudly and hold their ground, stand their case, because that is a time where that haughtiness is important and needs to be used. That's when it's appropriate. But other than that, it's not an appropriate time. But every single midah, even anger is not something we should ever feel. There's no place for anger except when it comes to students, teachers and students, and parents and children. There is a time to show anger, not to feel anger, but to show anger, because sometimes that's what it takes to get the children to get the message, or to get the students to understand the severity of what you're talking about. So if I ever look angry, understand, I'm angry at you. And crossing guards. I'm angry at crossing guards. No, I'm
Or
joking.
angry at your behavior.
What I'm saying is that the idea of anger should never be felt, but there is a time where it should be shown in order to get a message across.
But even anger towards your kids should be done with love.
Again, it should never be felt. You should never feel the anger. You should show the anger when it's important.
But
So,
not-
for example, with my kids, I will show them anger if they're doing something dangerous.
Right.
Other than that, I never show them anger. Never. I'll tell them they're wrong and I'll yell at them, but I'll never show them anger because anger is not appropriate. The only time anger is appropriate is when it's necessary to show the severity of something. So I had a Rebbe, ninth grade, and a kid was reading a book under his desk. And this Rebbe was like, he was like the quintessential Zadie. You know, it was like older, white beard, is always happy and smiling and, you know, walks slowly. He's one of those jolly guys, right? This guy had a book. The Rebbe took the book, ripped it out of his hands, and shredded it. Ripped it in half, and then in half again. He yelled at the kid. Because that was an affront to the respect of Torah. And you have to show anger for that. He wasn't angry. I assure you he wasn't angry. I know him very well. I've known him for 20 years now. He was not angry. But you have to show anger sometimes in order to get the severity of what you're talking about across to the person you're talking to. So there's a time and place for every single midah. If there wasn't, it wouldn't exist. So all the midas that are purely evil, there's no time and place for, we don't know what they are because they don't exist. They were never created, right? But everything that does, there is a time and place for it. So understand that it's called a midah, says Rav Chaim Friedlander, because the word midah means measure. Because everything has its measure, everything has its appropriateness, the way to use it. There's always an amount, but when it comes to rachamim, that should be, you know, a gallon, and the achzarius, the brazenness, should be, you know, an eighth of a teaspoon. You know, but there's a measure for every midah. So understand that even when he categorizes them here, he's not categorizing them entirely. He's saying this is the general way that they're being used. Sorry, I'm laughing. This is the correct. Because that's the general way that it would be used, not because it's the only way it can be used. Okay, good. Does this make sense? Yes? Anybody? Yes? Okay. All right, moving on. V'hine. Shira ha'chachma ha'alyona kol prata l'chaim.
Said Vahine.
Oh, very good. If I have enough fahines, Brad's gonna have to get another drink. Shira ha'chachma ha'alyona. Shira ha'chachma ha'alyona kol prata ha'inyanim. Hashem's wisdom calculated all the details of these ideas, of these midas, that are able and applicable to apply. They can happen. The leapel of Sharusam Mechaika Anashias, and that it will be possible for people to access these different midas and to use them. But the Atachlis Ha'ikri, based on the main goal, the purpose, that we mentioned. Meaning to say that all of the midas that were created, that were put into the world for the purpose of having people choose between the right and the wrong, between the good and the bad. So all the midas, exactly how much they need to apply, in exactly which situation, to exactly which person, at exactly the right time, all of that is decided by Hashem in His great wisdom to be able to put us in the right situations exactly, precisely, for us to make the decisions of choosing between right and wrong. So all that's put into place. V'himtzia Aisam b'chol b'chinas, and He created them and made them happen in all their different forms. See by same, the causes for these things to happen and the things that these cause to happen. V'chol hamislav lahem, and everything that accompanies them. V'chakika efsharusam ba'adam k'moshe kasamnu, and Hashem designed us, He put it into us to choose between them all at the right time and place.
Isn't the cause and effect of this boiled down to mida keneged mida? That are the midos that we're supposed to emulate is chesed chesed, gvura, tiferes, netzach, hod, yesod, and we're supposed to try to use those midos, and if we use them correctly, then there'll be a response from on high of kindness, and if we use them incorrectly, there'll be a response from on high of din. So it's like, that's the negative and the positive of it is that mida keneged mida. If I respond correctly, meaning if I respond in a situation which calls for more chesed, then that's very good. I'll meet that. That mida will be reflected back. And if I respond with din when it's not supposed to be din, there are times when, like you said, you're supposed to respond with gevura or din. Then that, if it's incorrect though, it'll be reflected back on me. So it's mida. It sounds like he's talking about mida keneged mida.
Okay, so what Stephen's saying here, for in case people didn't hear or don't understand, what Stephen's saying is that we have a concept that we mentioned previously, that the way Hashem works is the way we work towards others. So the way Hashem works towards us is going to reflect the way we act towards others. So if we are generally kind to others, Hashem will generally be kind to us, and vice versa. Now, I shouldn't say vice versa, and the same is true of the opposite, that if we're not kind, then, okay. So now, is that what he's talking about here? I don't think that's what he's talking about here. I think what he's talking about here is the purpose of life. The purpose of life, as he's mentioned, is for every single human being to make proper choices. And making those proper choices boils down to being put in a situation where you have to choose between the two sides and picking the right one.
Okay, that's strictly what he's talking about.
Right, so he's talking about the way Hashem designed the world in order to facilitate reaching this goal. The goal is that people should perfect themselves. How do they do that? By making these choices. How do those choices come about? Through all these different machinations and designs that Hashem has to put together to make the world, each person's world, set up to be able to do that. Okay. Okay. V'amnam.
Nope.
No. All right.
It's only the vihines.
Only the hines. Okay. L'sheyimatzu kol elah ha'anyanim.
It's a lot more per capita.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why not do both? When all of these, in order for all of these things to come together, there have to be a lot of different opportunities and different situations for people. Because all of these situations are tests for people. In that they give an opportunity for all of these different forms of midas to show up, and the opportunity for people to strengthen themselves against them and grab onto the goodness. So what he's saying over here is that if we were to design one person's life to figure this out, how this person is going to grow and have the opportunities to choose between right and wrong throughout their lifetimes, it would be extremely overwhelming. Because everything needs to be taken into account, all of their experiences need to be taken into account, their current state of mind needs to be taken into account, and then, in order to set up this situation, there have to be all sorts of things set into motion. You know, if my test is going to be about some guy walking into that shop and taking a chair out and putting it over there, right? Let's say that's my test. Do you understand how many pieces needed to be set into motion?
Yes.
How many years ago in order for that all to happen? That one little thing required the building of the property, the person who's working in there to make to be born and to make a choice to have that reaction, and then the people there to decide to go there, and then for us to take the chairs, there aren't enough, right? All that, it all has to come together, and that's like years of planning.
That's like with everything.
Stuff has to happen, exactly, and the whole world has to work that way. So there's a tremendous amount of calculation that goes into all of this, and thankfully Hashem is running the show, so we don't have to worry about that. You know, he does all that calculating for us, but understand that every single situation that we're in is there for a test, as he says. All these situations are tests for us. They don't just happen. They're not happenstance. It doesn't just work out that way because, oh, this person said that, so this is what's going to happen because of that. It's not the way it works. Hashem has everything worked out to put us in these situations of tests. So we have to appreciate the fact that every situation we're put into is Hashem's doing for our good, for our purpose, for being able to make the proper choices at the proper times. So don't ever look at someone else and say, oh, this is your fault. It might be their fault, but that's not why this happened. The reason it happened is because Hashem's saying you have a test. You have to figure out how you're going to react to the fact that it's that person's fault. It's not about that person, it's about you, and you have to think that way all the time and understand that Hashem is running the world that way.
But also
This
people
is
have,
like 101.
Oh, really? I made it to 101?
Yeah,
All right.
but also people have their choices too.
People have their choices,
and
yes.
their choices impact other people.
Their choices impact other people. Okay, so that's a very loaded statement you just made.
Right.
Say it again.
People make choices,
Right.
and those choices impact other people.
Okay, so the question that we've discussed many times is that true? Is it possible for me to impact you if that's not what's supposed to happen? If Hashem decided you should not have to deal with the frustration today, and I go and frustrate you,
Yep.
is that possible? Can I put you in a frustrating situation? Hashem decided today's not a day that you're getting frustrated?
That's also like a direct contradiction to what we just learned here, which is that there is good and evil exists, and how we react to things is whether it's going to be a good reaction or a bad reaction.
Right.
So we have those choices. We have
Correct.
we have those choices.
Mhm.
Those choices impact other people.
Do they?
If I stub my toe and I decide to hammer somebody in the head,
Yes.
that's my fault.
Yeah, but one second, it is your fault. But was that person supposed to get hammered in the head or not?
What?
But was that person supposed to get hammered in the head? Was that part of the original plan from the moment before he was born?
Not really, because that would
No?
mean, that would mean that I was destined to sin.
No. You still made the choice.
Hammer could have fallen off a shelf.
One second, you made the choice to react that way and fulfill that destiny for that person.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that it was supposed to